Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Freedom to Be Yourself. Today's guest is someone whose presence brings clarity, strategy, and deep encouragement to professionals who often feel overlooked, not because they lack talent, but because they lead quietly. I'm honored to welcome today Lizey Apia, a certified career strategist, certified organizational coach, and proud ICF member. She is the founder of We Apply, and her mission is powerful to help introverted leaders and founders advance their careers, articulate their value, and lead with quiet confidence. With over 115 training programs under her belt and features in the Global and Mail, Fortune magazine, and LinkedIn News, Lisa's work is not only recognized, it's deeply respected. In today's episode, we'll talk about your voice, your pace, and your quiet power that are not your weaknesses to overcome, but they're the leadership style that world needs now. So, Lisa, I'm so excited to have you here. You've been promoted five times in under 8 years as an introvert. And before we even jump to this question, I want to ask you, how do you define the word introvert for yourself?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. In terms of being an introvert, a lot of people think that it means being shy, but they're two very different things. So, being an introvert is your personality. And so, it's basically how you dispense energy or how you receive energy. So, typically, for someone who's introverted, they get energy by solitude, by being on their own, having the opportunity to recharge. And that's typically how an introvert will gain energy. People who are more extroverted, they gain energy by socializing, by being around people, by talking to other people. So it's more of a question of energy management, and introverts just manage their energy differently than extroverted people do.
Wow, I've never heard a definition like that in my life ever. And it's when it comes to the word energy, wow, that is so beautiful. And now it makes total sense what it means. For example, for me to be alone, to recharge, and that gives me energy big time.
Mhm.
Wow, I've never heard of this way. So beautiful. Lisa, I know so many women in my community are quiet achievers, and it's in our cultural code to be quiet, but they still feel invisible at work and they suffering from that. Can you take us back? How did you start owning your power as a quiet leader? And I love this two words together, quiet leader. It's like hot ice. It's almost pretty much impossible. Can you please tell a little bit about this?
Sure. So I started my career working I had some past work experience, but I would say my professional career really started when I joined the federal government here in Canada. And I realized that in order to be visible and to be seen, I had to put myself out there. And that's how most people were getting promotions. That's how people were excelling in their careers, even if there was a formal structure where you had to apply and different things like that. The aspect of being able to put yourself out there, showcase your skills was still very important. And for me as an introvert coming into the workspace, what I thought was important is doing hard work. You're working hard, you're delivering results, and I was doing good work, so I thought that should be enough. But I came to a situation where we were doing an international negotiation with a foreign partner, and I was leading the file. So I was leading the negotiation, and it was at the time by phone, mostly our conversations through conference calls. And when the time came to travel for for the negotiation to finalize everything, sign the documents and all that, my director at the time decided that he was going to send another guy instead of sending me. And I was like, what? Why? I had to ask, like, why? And he said basically that, you're really good at what you do. You're great at doing the research, but we need someone who's more charismatic to be the person who's going to be the face of the negotiation. And that really stood out to me. And I really held on to that because the truth is, I was involved in so many things outside of work. Public speaking was part of the daily things that I did. I had a nonprofit organization where I was supporting youth with their career development. So I was speaking in groups, part of many settings that required me to speak and often negotiate as well. I coached people on how to negotiate. I was certified in negotiations. I knew what it was, right? But
Yeah.
then in that moment, they didn't select me. So that was an eye opener for me that I needed to make an adjustment. And what ended up happening is that this person who went to the negotiation, he ended up getting promoted shortly after because it was a big deal. And so it allowed him to get a lot of visibility. It allowed him to be in front of executives and different things like that. He did get a promotion. And that's when I told myself, okay, what can I do based on who I am without stretching myself to try to be somebody else? What strategies can I put in place to ensure that I can still excel in my career? And that's when I started being strategic about how I was positioning myself in the workplace, leveraging my listening skills, leveraging my observation skills to be able to find gaps within the organization and be the solution to the problems that they had. And that's how I started to land promotions. The first out of 5 promotions that I landed was because I listened to a need that was within the organization. And I put my hand up to say that, hey, I know how to solve this problem. And I got noticed by an executive who was building a team. They were looking for the expertise I had, and they brought me on as the first promotion. And it kind of ripple effect from there. Uh, to be able to expand my reach, expand my network, and apply for the various promotions that I had. And so, yeah, I landed 5 promotions in less than 8 years. I say less than 8 years because I did take 15 months off for maternity leave. So really, if it was continuous, it would have been like 5 promotions in 6 years. But yeah, so that's the story.
Wow, and it's beautiful that you said you don't have to you don't have to be loud, right? So you can still be yourself and you can lead. And that is why I just want to ask you one more question. Was there a moment when you realized that being quiet, not being loud, right, didn't mean being small? Because a lot of people think that being quiet means stay low, don't speak up, and be just like being small, right? So can you talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was in that first it was my first permanent role. I had some previous roles with the government, but that was my first permanent role. And that's when I realized that as much as I was a quieter person, it didn't mean necessarily that I had to diminish myself or diminish my abilities. And it was up to me to take up that space, right? Because at the end of the day, to succeed in your career, it's not just about your performance, it's also about your image, how you're presenting yourself, and your exposure, who knows you and who knows the work that you do. So, really, when I started to recognize the value that I was bringing to the organization, when I realized the impact that I was making, I started building the confidence to be able to advocate for myself more firmly that I am the person who can solve this problem that you have. But it all starts with that self belief, right? If I was doubting myself still and I was thinking, like, hey, imagine that situation with the guy who ended up getting the promotion. If I had told myself, oh my gosh, I got passed up for a promotion, I'm never going to get promoted again. Now, what am I going to do in my career? I could have still been at that same level.
Yeah.
Who knows how many years later, right? But for me, it was a wake up call. And I think that's what makes the difference. Being able to recognize that you do have control over your career. A lot of people just think their career just happens. Whatever is happening around them, they just have to accept it. But you can control your career. You can dictate and influence the way your career is going to go based on how you think about yourself and also how you think about your work.
That's right. And you're an ICF coach as well. So you know it better than anybody else, right? So thoughts, beliefs, thoughts, emotions, right? Actions, it all comes together. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful what you said that you have to change your mindset as well, right?
Yeah.
Because if someone is getting something that you want, it doesn't mean you're never gonna get it. It means the opposite. Okay, so he or she got it. That means it is possible I can get it too.
Yeah.
But to jump from this kind of belief to the opposite is that's a gap. And you have to do everything to start thinking differently. I love that because I believe that in it just like in my opinion, everything, success in every single thing, business, career, 80% it's your mindset.
Completely agree. Yeah.
And tools, people, circumstances, events, they will just come to you if you have the right way of thinking. And
Totally.
this is just beautiful what you just said. And why do you think introverted women? Because I think it's more about women. Men are more, there are introverted men as well, but I
Yeah.
think it's in a lot of times in our culture, especially in the Russian speaking culture, women have to a lot of times before my parents had this stereotype, sit home, cook, take care of her husband and her kids, be quiet, right? And just be happy with what your husband brings home, right? So
Mhm.
that was a very typical stereotype. And my mom specifically had to fight for that. And in our family, she was the first person who actually decided to have her own business. And that was a big thing. That is why I am very determined. And that's why I'm having my own business because I had a role model. But I think for her, it was also difficult, right? And we have a lot of people like her and like me. I'm very introverted because I just have a role model that's easier for me. But if I didn't have this, that would be very difficult for me to go and jump from an employee to an employer mindset. And for a lot of introverted women, especially immigrant women, and Canada is just, the hub of a lot of immigrant women here, often get passed over for promotions as well. And that's what you just said, right? So someone was ahead of you. So why do you think this is happening?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good question. And it's interesting. The dynamic men and women is an interesting one because it's one I've been thinking about a lot because recently I've had a lot of men approaching me for my services. And I was like, oh, I thought that it was mostly women who
Yeah.
had who were more introverted who would be interested in my services. At some point, I was focused mostly on women, and now I'm realizing half of my clientele are men, especially men in tech. I'm realizing a lot of engineers that I work with. So it's interesting that you're bringing up the gender issue or the gender conversation. But to answer your question, it's rooted in the fact that there's unconscious biases, right? So as much as, you're a woman, the more layers you add in terms of how far away you are from what this society deems the norm, then it becomes more and more challenging because of those unconscious biases. And I was reading an article, I think last week or the week before, and the author, the scholar, he described it as complex visibility. And he was talking about the fact that there's different levels of visibility. So he was focusing more on people of color. That was the focus of the study. But he was basically saying that, a lot of times when we talk about the workplace, we say people need to speak up, you need to be visible, all these things that are very important to be able to take your space in the workplace. But there are also what we call complex visibilities for people who are people of color, or sometimes women as well can fall in this category, where essentially there's hypervisibility, where you get into a room and everybody knows you're the only Black person at the table, or everybody knows you're the only immigrant at the table, or you speak and you sound completely different than everybody else.
Right.
So there's hypervisibility, then there's invisibility, where you're working very hard and then your work isn't getting noticed. And then the last thing that he talks about is managed visibility, where there's part of yourself that you're hiding, even because you're trying to fit within the structure. And this is what we call like code switching. So
Mhm.
basically, you wouldn't speak a certain way in a corporate setting because you feel like you won't be accepted for who you truly are. And I think all those layers influence why women are impacted by this idea that you have to stay quiet, this idea that you have to reduce yourself, you have to diminish yourself in order to be accepted. But then what ends up happening is that by reducing yourself, you're reducing your value and you're just seen as any other person instead of being seen as someone who can provide value. So again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about the need for people to be able to manage their own careers. As much as, yes, there are these barriers, there are these unconscious biases. It is true. I'm not denying it at all. I've lived through it. I'm sure you've lived through it. And many immigrants or people of various backgrounds have lived through these situations. But the end of the day is that you have to make a choice. We're quite a bit. Some of my clients are immigrants who are coming to Canada sometimes for the first time. And they tell me things like, oh, I heard that in Canada, I have to take any job because that's the norm. I have to start
Mhm.
at the bottom because I'm starting over. Like, who said? Who said you have to start over? Who said that because you don't have Canadian experience, that's the limitation? Because you're coming and you're listening to one voice of people who are telling you, oh, if you come to Canada, you have to start as a cleaner, you have to start at any job to be able to start off, even if you have degrees and experience. So I have some clients, they take off everything from their resume. They don't put any experience because they're like, oh, I just need to be able to get something, right? And that's mindset. That's, again, the mindset. If you're coming in and you're telling yourself it's going to be difficult, but I am going to position myself. I'm going to work on my brand. I'm going to work on my resume. I'm going to position myself for something more, then you will be able to get the outcome that you're looking for. But if you're just deciding that you're going to settle for less, then that's also the outcome you'll get. So it's all a question of how you position yourself and the mindset. Obviously, it can be more challenging, but it doesn't mean it's impossible.
I have chills when you were saying all of that because
Yeah.
I was on both sides of this. So
Yeah.
when I came to Canada, I went to college and I came as a teacher already, right?
Okay.
And I came to Canada, and that's exactly what I thought, that I'm not worthy,
Hmm.
that I'm not like everybody else. These guys were born here, right? So that's where all thoughts that I had in my head. I can't apply for anything that I want to because it's gonna be possible. I am different. I sound different. I look different. I don't fit in. I don't belong yet. So, and that's why I was cleaning houses. I
Hmm.
was a waiter. So, well, that's what, I've been there. And
Yeah.
then at just one point when I graduated from college, I had my degree. It's also in my head as well that I have to have some sort of education in this country to be able and be eligible to apply for anything. So when I went and applied for the positions that are lower, I didn't get a job. And then
Interesting.
one day, out of the blue, it was like a miracle. I got an offer to be an assistant of a vice president of sales in a
Oh,
financial company.
wow. That's
And can you believe that? So I was applying for something smaller that I was, and I didn't get it. It's like the universe was telling me, no, 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 no. That's the wrong door. Don't go there. And then I got it. Right. And it's interesting how you all say that's all your mindset. And speaking of that, I actually love that when you said reducing yourself, you're reducing your value. So
Mm.
true. So, in your experience, what are some internal beliefs? Because we were talking about mindset already. Immigrant women like myself, right, hold them back from taking the lead and actually apply for what they want and to get a promotion and to do anything they want because that is what they truly desire. What are
Yeah.
the beliefs, internal beliefs?
Yeah, it's a good question. I will say, at the end of the day, I respect the hustle because I have been in the situations where you need the money.
Yeah.
You just got to do what you got to do to get the money. But what I always tell my clients when they take a bridge job, and I always tell them, call it a bridge job, not a survival job. Because if you're calling it a survival job, you're going to stay there and you're just going to survive in that job until you find yourself that it becomes your full-time job. But if you call it a bridge job, that means it's just a job that you're taking temporarily while you're still working towards something else. And that's again, our words, they influence the way that we see things. They influence the way that we interact with the world. So I'm all good with people taking bridge jobs. But the thing is, it's all about mindset and how you value things. Some of the ways of thinking that I've seen that can limit people is that, for example, saying, okay, this is a survival job. Then it's been 3 years, 4 years, you're in the survival job and you're staying there. Because then you start saying, I get home from work, I'm tired. I don't have time to start applying for another job. I don't have time to be able to go on LinkedIn and start positioning myself and updating my resume. I have kids, I have this, life is overwhelming in a new country. It's difficult. So then the years go by and you kind of stay the same. So I see that mindset sometimes. I also see the mindset sometimes of people who look at job descriptions and they're like, oh, I don't have this one. I don't have that one. I don't have this one. I can't apply for that job because I don't have the experience. But really, if you look at a job poster and you meet every single requirement, that means you're overqualified.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to meet every single requirement when you look at a job poster. You should meet maybe 60 to 70%. At the end of the day, a job is also for learning. If you already know everything that is in the job, you're not going to learn anything. That means you're not going to grow, right? So you need to be able to position yourself. If you meet 60 to 70% of the requirements, sometimes in job posters, they say this experience is required and then some experience is asset. If you meet most of the required, the asset is nice to have, then go ahead and apply, right? So something that I see as a limiting belief is self-rejection. If they say no, okay, sure, that's fine, you move on. But why would you say no to yourself if you know that you're capable of doing the job, right? So again, that's sometimes a way that we limit ourselves by self-rejection and not allowing ourselves the opportunities to put ourselves out there. And so, yeah, those are some examples of how that can show up, at least for my clients that I work with who are internationally trained professionals.
Wow. It just blew my mind what you said. 60 to 70% only.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be qualified and meet all the requirements. That's huge. And
Yeah.
I think that's such a relief for a lot of people to hear that. And thank you for saying that because a lot of people are, and you mentioned that, perfectionists.
Mhm.
And for them, 100 has to be 100. And that's what you said as well. So I'm not going to apply because I don't have this. These are the people that are perfectionists. So they want to have everything perfect, right?
Yeah.
And you also mentioned, uh, right? You also mentioned something about the internal critic, right? So that you just always just like there's like a little person on your shoulders, like always saying that you can't do that, don't for that, right? So this is all part of that, and I loved what you said, and I've never heard of that before. Self rejection.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. Can you explain a little bit more about this?
Sure.
In everyday life, how does it show up in your life?
Yeah, it can show up in different ways, at least for the job search. It's like you're looking at the application, knowing that this is definitely a job I can do. And then you tell yourself you're not going to apply. So you're not even giving yourself that opportunity to go through the screening process. You're deciding to reject yourself before you even take the step. I've had situations like this in my own life, even starting my business. I recently celebrated 5 years of being in business. And I wrote a LinkedIn post because I was reflecting back on like, how did it all start? But I had my business idea since 2013. It wasn't what it is today, but at the time, 2013 was when I was finishing my master's degree. And I was thinking, okay, should I start a business or should I go for the government job? I ended up going for the government job because stability, the pension, all these things. So,
Yeah.
but then I never gave myself the opportunity to actually try and say, like, hey, if I actually try starting this business, what could it look like? So I robbed myself from that opportunity. Thankfully, 7 years later in 2020, after I had my son, I decided, you know what? I've had this idea for long enough. I'm going to do something about it. And I decided to start the business. But that's another example of self-rejection because you're not giving yourself that chance. And often why you're not giving yourself that chance to try is just fear. You're afraid
Yeah.
of the outcome. You're thinking, oh, I'm going to fail. Or sometimes it's fear of success. Some people are just afraid that I'll be too successful. If it works, then what does it mean? I come
Yeah.
from a family that nobody has done this before. Nobody has had a degree. Nobody has worked in an office job. Nobody has worked for the government. So what does this mean if I'm the first one? And you fear that success, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what self-rejection looks like.
Oh, I have chills again because that is the reason why I actually became a coach myself.
Ah,
Because yeah, I'm ICM certified, so it's Alyssa Nabria's program,
okay.
and this is why I was discovering myself, right? And that's interesting. True story.
Mm-hmm.
Before this program, I I was writing down because for me, fear of success was huge.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the first person in my family, in my generation, like in everything, that I decided to go abroad and live somewhere else away from the family, right? And I'm the first person who actually wanted to fulfill all my dreams, right? And here I was sitting on my couch and I'm thinking, I'm scared to be successful. What if I
Wow.
have 100 students, 500 students, and I cannot help all of them, right? So I was having all these thoughts and funny enough, I did some tool and I was just journaling. I love that. And true story, I never told it to anyone. I said, what if my academy, my typewriter academy, the American Accent Academy, is successful today? And I've accomplished everything I wanted. What is tomorrow? And I started journaling. And that was a year and a half ago. And I was thinking, well, I always wanted to become a life coach. But I was thinking to myself, it's going to happen when I'm 50, 60 years old, when I
Mm.
have 3 Ferraris in my garage, and I can just tell people how to live their life because I've accomplished everything I wanted.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way. And guess what? I did that. I journaled. I went through all of this. I swear it to God. 3 weeks later, I had a call with Elisa, and she was saying, you are the perfect candidate to become a coach. You
Wow.
have to do it. And I say that and I have chills. And this is the power of realizing, of being aware of of what your fear is, work on that, and you get the result right away.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because that's what we're saying, the mindset. You start thinking differently. You start having a different kind of energy. Everything is helping you to get what that is truly yours. And that is so, so, so beautiful. Thanks for saying that because for me, fear of success was technically the thing that stopped me from everything.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
once I resolved that, things started to move differently. Because for a lot of people, think that fear of failure is the biggest one.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, a lot of times it's the fear of success.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because for me, it was, you know what it was? I was thinking, if I accomplish everything in my business, I'm going to be bored. And
Yeah.
for me, being bored is the worst thing ever because I like to wake up in the morning, having my agenda, what I'm doing today, da 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 da. And if I wake up and there's nothing to do, I am bored. That's it. I think that uses that's it for me. So that is why for me was the biggest fear ever, fear of success, being bored. So and then for all the listeners, just do some journal and think about this as well. Thank you so much for bringing this up.
Yes.
Lisa, a huge part of my work is definitely helping women to feel confident in English, and I help them through my tool, sounding beautifully in American English in Canada, in the US, even with an accent. Because, and I was a perfectionist myself, I was like, only 100% should be like that. But I was just like, right now, who cares? 90, 95, 85, 97, 98, because it's all in your head. If you get to 95, 90, 97, you can get to 100. But you have to give yourself some sort of, a chance to have this 3, 4, 5% of having the accent, right? A lot of times. So many of us feel like our voice when we have the accent is wrong, that something is wrong with me if I have the accent. I don't belong, just because we sound different. So, what would you say to someone who says, I'll speak up, I'll apply for this position only when my English is perfect?
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of like a meme or quote that you often see on LinkedIn where it says that don't make fun of people with broken English because it shows that they can speak multiple languages. So I think that's the beauty of being able to have an accent is that it shows that there's a beautiful background behind who you are and what you do. And if you really think of it, we all have an accent. Like if I go now to a different country, I don't sound the same. I don't speak English the same. I was recently with a guy from Algeria at a networking event. I started speaking French and he was like, "Oh, I love your accent." And in my we're like, "I don't have a good accent." But there you go, right? Because I don't speak French the way he speaks French.
Yeah.
We all have an accent depending on where you are in the world, right? So it's all a matter of embracing what you bring. I know some people, and this is probably part of what you do to help people embrace the way they communicate. And then, depending on, there's some languages that when you transfer it to English, the way you pronounce certain words may not pronounce it the same way. And so, yes, if you need to work on those things, your pronunciation or the way you present your vocabulary, I think that's important. And there's nothing wrong with self-development and self-improvement. I improve myself all the time. I develop all
Thank you.
the time, right?
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
But then at the end of the day, it shouldn't trying to get better at something shouldn't hold you back from making an impact. You can still make an impact while you're learning, while you're growing. You don't need to say, okay, I'm going to stop and I'm going to spend the next year figuring out how to do this, that you could have still been making progress towards your goals. And I often see this with some of my clients. Like, okay, I'm going to do another certification. This certification, this course, this is what's going to help me. It's and then you stop everything because you're like, I'm doing the certification. But then you're just delaying the progress that you could have made. Maybe while working on the certification, you could have been updating your resume at the same time. You could have been expanding your network, talking to your network to build a network in Canada instead of waiting to have everything done perfectly before you take the next step. So that's just what I would say. You need self-development, go for it. It's important to develop yourself. It's important to develop your skills. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, don't let it stop you or delay you from making an impact.
We can have the same rule here, 60 or 70%, right?
Ah, sure. Yeah.
We said that
Why not?
before.
Why
Shouldn't be
not?
100. If it's 60, 60 is like what? A little bit more than 50,
Yeah.
which is already great. So what a relief, right? You don't have to be perfect and you'll still be okay with that. So I love that. And I can tell you from my perspective, when I was working on my accent and improving my accent, right now I'm thinking, why did I have to wait for so long and teach people the way I'm teaching right now? I could have done this 10 years ago because I thought it's not enough. But if you look back, for a lot of people that English is not their native language, my accent was perfect. And right now, because my value is growth, and that is why it's just me. For not a lot of people, growth is the value, by the way. But for me, I had to be precise. I had to know, how do I make this sound? And how do I make this vowel? And how do I make this consonant? Oh, it sounds different. And that is a completely different journey. What I know right now, literally 1% of my students need,
Wow.
right? So this is what I'm saying. But I was holding myself back, thinking that 99% of my students need what I have today. You know what I mean? So that is just want to, tell this and tell to all the people that are listening today. What do you think that you need something else, something else, something else? You might not need that because a lot of people out there want and need what you have now.
Yeah.
And you can start from there. And then when you grow, you develop, your clients will be different, students will be different, but there will be always someone who needs your expertise, who needs your advice. And don't hold yourself back. Act today because that time is ticking. You have to move, baby. So that's the only way. And don't do this the hard way, the way I did it. Don't wait for a long time. Like Lisa said, 2013 was the idea. For me, it was the same thing. I just wanted to add that. When I had my second boy, right? He was born. This is when I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to
Mhm.
work for myself. Because for me, the number one thing was to be able, when they go to school, I work. When they finish school, I'm with them. I go to every sport event, I go to everywhere they go to spend time with my boys, with my kids. And that was the priority for me. I'm getting there. It's almost there. But I have to say that I'm very, very blessed that I'm almost where I wanted to go. I pick up my at 2 o'clock and I spend time with them. I come home and I work a little bit, but I spend a lot of time with them. So don't wait. Do this today. That is for sure. Lisa, you're also a LinkedIn expert, right? So, and many women listening right now, we have a nice bridge going from Act Now today. They either avoid LinkedIn, that was me. I avoided with all certifications, everything you name it. I actually started my LinkedIn in March, I think.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Interesting.
I just started. So that's what I'm saying. Or they just feel that if there's some, Instagram, Facebook, talking about their services, and in our case, we're going to talk about LinkedIn, that they feel that it's too self-promotional. Like, why do I have to say about this every single day? What would you say to someone who says, I don't want to show off, right? I just like they have to accept me for they have to find me. So I know they don't know that I exist, but they have to find me. And they say, I'm not that loud, confident type. I'll just be quiet and I sit here and they'll find me one day.
Yeah. Well, firstly, congratulations to you on getting started. I think we met
Thank you.
on LinkedIn, so you
That's right.
started and now you're making new connections. So
I love that.
you're
Love that. So don't lose that, guys. It's so beautiful.
good job. To answer your question, I mostly focus on helping introverts, leaders, and founders to be able to build their personal brand on LinkedIn is to allow them to attract opportunities. One of the big things that I focus on is helping people get away from always chasing opportunities to begin to attract them. And as an introvert, when we're talking again about energy management, what is easier, if you want, for someone who's more introverted is instead of you always having to apply for the jobs continuously, or instead of you pitching yourself all the time, being able to build a brand that consistently brings leads to you is a much more sustainable way for someone who's introverted. So that's the focus of the strategy. And so, in terms of somebody who thinks that it means you're self promoting too much, at the end of the day, what it is that you're stating facts. Did you get those certificates? Yes. Did you get that award? Yes. Did you get that experience? Yes. So if you're putting it out there, it's not like you made it up. You did those things, right? So if you were able to do those things, then you should be able to talk about them as well. And the thing is, often because we are so knowledgeable about our area of expertise, we think that, oh, this is too basic. I don't need to make a LinkedIn post to tell people this. They already know this. But you'd be surprised that sometimes the littlest of information that I share sometimes on LinkedIn or about being introverted, that I'm like, yeah, well, you should know this. But that's what somebody comes up and they're like, oh my gosh, this helped me change my career. This helped me change my business. And in my head, I'm like, really? Okay, that's great, right? But it's the littlest things that can make an impact. So it's all about recognizing that we all have different paths, and you have maybe taken a few steps ahead in a certain area, and somebody's trying to get there, and you can be that person who supports them. So instead of seeing it as it's all about me, I'm talking all about myself, see it as you're providing value to somebody else. You're providing value to be able to educate somebody, to inspire someone through your story, to be able to help somebody so that they can make a difference in their lives as well. So it's actually not about you, it's about you serving and helping other people. So that's what building a brand is all about.
Wow. Love that. I just wrote it down. Providing value, educate and inspire, right? So
Mhm.
serving and helping. Because a lot of times when people think of business, they think that they sell, 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 but it's a different word with the same letter at the beginning. You
Yeah.
serve, you don't
Yeah.
sell, you serve because this is the only way people will know you. And this is again about the mindset. I have a question for you. It might be tricky right now, but how to go from the mindset I'm selling to serving.
Mhm. Firstly, it's more about your approach. It's all about your approach. If you're coming on LinkedIn and all you're doing is you connect with someone, you send them a DM to, hey, I'm selling this, I'm selling that. Do you have a job? I get these messages all the time. Here's my resume. Are you hiring right now? Can you hire me? Can you refer me to this person or that person? That's selling ultimately. And that's what feels uncomfortable for a lot of people because they get these messages on LinkedIn and they're like, I don't want to be that person. If you're serving, then you're focusing more on actually building authentic relationships with people, building genuine relationships with people. And sometimes what happens on LinkedIn, because people are so used to that transactional kind of relationships, when you're trying to reach out to someone and like, hey, just trying to get to know you, what are you up to? People do get defensive sometimes because they're like, oh, this person's going to sell me something. But at the end of the day, if you have a specific target in mind, whether it's to get a new job or you're trying to expand your reach for your services, being strategic about who you connect with, how you connect with them, and for what purpose is ultimately what's going to get you the results because people hire people and people buy from people. So if you want to get hired, you need people. If you want to get your service or get your business to advance, you need people as well. So you can't do it in isolation. You need to be able to connect and build relationships.
Love that. I'm writing down so much today. So, and that's what I wrote down again. Serving, focus on relationships. I
Mhm.
love that. And that's a huge mindset shift right away here. Beautiful. Lisa, we're almost getting to the end and it's
Wow.
it's been a
Yeah.
beautiful talk, by the way, beautiful conversation. So, I love giving my listeners actionable takeaways. And what the 2 or 3 small steps someone listening can take this week to start showing up as a leader, as a quiet leader, right? So, and if the person is soft spoken, introverted, or uncertain, so what can you suggest today to
Yeah,
our listeners?
I just had two of my clients who optimized their LinkedIn profile and had recruiters reach out to them in 24 hours.
Wow.
These were people who were job searching for months and they weren't getting any results. So one thing I would tell you if you're someone who's currently job searching, I know that the job market is difficult right now, but being able to take the steps to ensure that you're getting the results that you want means that you need to be strategic. So if you want something quick, that can deliver you a lot of results, update your LinkedIn profile. I know many people created a LinkedIn profile when they graduated from university or from high school or whatever it may be. And the profile is there, but they never did anything with it, right? So If you're looking for some change in your career, update your LinkedIn profile and keyword optimize it. By that, I mean to put words that you want to be found for. So if you're a social media manager and you want people to find you as a social media manager, that word social media manager needs to be in your profile and throughout your profile. The second thing I would say for a quiet leader who wants to make traction in their career is to track and write down your career accomplishments. So often we just go through the day to day. We're just doing our job and we never take the time to actually stop and recognize the impact that we've made and the wins that we've had in our career. So write down some of the key wins that you've had in the last year or the last 3 years, whatever it may be. And you'll recognize that you've actually done so much. And it's an instant confidence boost. And in addition to that, taking the time to write down those stories will help you when you're updating your resume, LinkedIn profile. It's going to help you with your salary negotiations, interview prep. So, yeah, that would be another tip. And then the other thing I would say for quiet leader is if you need to be able to get support, then find the resources that are required to help you. We've been talking a lot about self development, mindset, journaling, coaching. These are all resources that can help you make significant progress in your career. Sometimes just getting an outside voice that is able to guide you in a certain direction, ask you the right question to help you think in a certain way can make the world of a difference. So it's not because you're quiet that you have to do everything alone. And sometimes so some of my clients, like, they've reached out to me for support, but they still feel like I have to do it alone. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you have someone,
Yeah.
rely on the people around you as well.
And that is beautiful as well. Lisa, thank you so much for being today. It was amazing. I love the conversation. You brought so much wisdom and very authentic. And I love that. And I always appreciate that. Lisa, where can our listeners find you if they want to connect and reach out?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about LinkedIn, so it's probably the best place to find me, Lisa with two S's, Apia. And my website is weapply.ca. That's another place where you can find me. So yeah, that would be where.
We'll include all the links in the show notes. Thank you so much for being today here. And I hope that we'll connect once again sometime in
Yeah.
the future. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa. Big hug. Bye bye.